All right, I'm here with John Woodward, the subject of the second season of Footsteps in the Dark podcast, and I've got something lined up kind of special for him today. He just got out here about 3 weeks ago, and in June I was able to get in touch with Thomas Ray Jackson, the incarcerated con man who set John up back in 2010. And Thomas and I had a long phone call where he basically confessed everything. And I've shared that Jackson did that, but John's never actually heard the recording. So today we're going to do our own reaction video with John listening to the phone call between Thomas Jackson and myself. So we're just going to go ahead and get that play in here. I've got it set up at a good point in it. Here we go. Sorry, what's that?
I said my dog just had puppies.
Oh, what kind of dog is it?
Rhodesian Ridgehound.
Oh, yeah, those are cool dogs.
Yeah. Wicked. I got 12 puppies on one.
No. my wife's allergic to most dogs. I had a Weimaraner, and we found out the hard way. So. Took him about 10 seconds to try to sell me something.
That's a pretty cool dog.
The Weimaraners are neat. They're neat dogs. I went through all the emails you sent.
Yeah.
And do you do like a voice to text type of stuff when you email?
I do. That's why it's kind of messed up.
Yes, I mean some of it's kind of hard to follow.
I don't doubt it. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. But I went through and I tried to make notes and kind of get the gist of everything. And I'm assuming like when the name Baxter shows up that's Backstrom.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was what I was hoping to do is maybe have you kind of run me down, kind of what just kind of the stuff that you wrote about, and then I might have just a handful of questions as well.
All right. So we start or what?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, like I said, me and John met. We were friends, and the truck we going by was Jeep Cherokee. It has nothing to do with Brenda. And the other truck that she trying to claim that I had something to do with, which I didn't. But it's a whole other story. This is after the fact too. And so I was barred from minimum security because I had a detainer at the time. I took out a detainer, but they still barred me because it wasn't long enough for me to go. And I kind of felt salty about that. And so when I got called in their office first time after they searched my cell, and that kid, I kind of played it back by ear and just listened to him as they were prodding at me and telling me this and telling me that. And I didn't really say a lot. And then I went back and I went to my caseworker, who was a pretty good guy. He's like a biker dude, and talked to him off the record. And he said, if I got involved in it, I had to be transferred. And that should go to minimum. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, I got to go to minimum. I'll force them to send me to minimum. But I didn't expect what they wanted me to do, and I didn't expect how it was going to backfire in my face. But I got the minimum all right through the county jail and desegregation and everything else, but didn't expect that. But John turned around when all this was going on and wanted to pay Jan because Jan paid some money, and he said, look, I'll take $2,500 and pay her. That kind of pissed me off too, but it wasn't that great a big a deal. So when Jan wanted to know about selling the truck, I told her don't worry about it. And so then investigators come to her house and took letters and everything else from me and talked to her about it. But then that's when he come to me and said, this is what I want you to do. And I'm like, at first I didn't want to do that because I'm like, I'm in prison. You wear a wire. And not really. And then Snake Plixon spoke up, started running his mouth and telling me, threatening me with charges and everything else, and you're not getting out and everything else. And naturally I turned around and was like, okay. But see, John, numerous times tried to get out of it. Tried to just like, man, don't even worry about it, bro. And but every time they would get those things, they would talk to me and be like, well, he don't want to do anything. He's out. Well, listen, redirect him. Every time he does it, just redirect him. So he kept telling me that, to not let him, let's say, make it out for himself.
It's all about him.
Go ahead. I paused it.
It's all about him. You know, they came to him, and it's a complete change of context for what really happened, for what this whole story is all about. They didn't come to him, search his room, and then push him to redirect me. He was selling me to them. It's all backwards. He really fed you more of a line of garbage than I believe, Chad. He really did. But I mean, he does get that part right as I'm trying to get out of it. He was pushing me and I'm pushing him back. So that he's trying to explain why the context of me pushing back, saying, listen, I'll give you the money. I don't want no part of this thing. But it's all about him. He's just fed you lines of bullshit pretty much. But and here's another thing I realized. He said, I think I know why he won't admit to the truck deal. Because Brenda owned the truck. And he doesn't want to look to her like he was doing a misdeal, selling a truck he didn't own yet. He told me he owned it. He said he had bought it from them. He never owned it. That's what I think the story is there. That's why Cherokee, there was never mention of any Cherokee. So there's a whole bunch of just lies right now is my first impression.
Yeah. So every time they would hear that, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, there's 3 or 4 tapes that, John's denying, don't want to do anything, just bullshitting. And it started out just bullshitting conversation. And they disappeared. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, I can get the minimum. John ain't going to be charging me anything because he's already tried to get out 3 or 4 times on tape. That ain't going to happen. The tapes are screwed up. I know that. So, okay. Well, before they transferred me, John transferred to the kitchen. And I did a good job. But they make me transfer to the kitchen with him and move from the building I was in. We swing across
That's what I was telling
yard.
you about.
Quarter mile away,
He never wanted to come there. They made him come there. They put him on me. And he's bringing that up. That part is true. They put him on me. But it's not like he was innocent. He was willing to get on me with them. Mm-hmm. This is a government conspiracy, really, is what it is.
And his unit. And then, like, a couple doors down from it. And they forced that hand, too, which I didn't like. So I'm starting to realize that, shit, I got to get out in December. But I'm not going to get out in December if I don't like all these fucking guys. But I knew that, I just knew there was enough, there shouldn't nothing come of it. But they turned and twisted it. That's why I call that guy Snake Plipson. That's exactly what he is. So I went to minimum after it got put in the paper. It wasn't supposed to be public, wasn't supposed to be in the paper, wasn't supposed to be in the news, wasn't supposed to be nothing. So I'm in minimum and line of lakes. And the warden knows and about me, and that's that. And I'm working, good job. Next thing you know, they come cut me up, take me to segregation. Then they transfer me to county jail under Thomas Agger, not Thomas Jackson. So I couldn't be located. And then from there I went to Detroit Lakes, like 3 hours away, and on a road crew. And any issue I had up there, Azure would drive all the way up there to resolve the issue. And because I was getting pretty pissed off about this by this time, about the moves they were putting me through, and putting me in the paper, putting me on the news and everything else. I wasn't happy with my plan with backburning. You know what I'm saying?
What are you thinking?
I'm thinking that it's all about him. I was mad about this, I'm mad about that, and he got to minimum, which is what he wanted, and Guy Bosch wasn't going to let him go. He was in charge of that, and this is kind of part of why he did it. I think he wanted to show them that he could get to minimum, but at the end of the day, it's all about him, and he's just so full of lies. It's all lies. Everything, the whole context is about lies. But we already discussed that, a lot of that. I already felt it, but I see more now than ever. He's it's all about him. It's all about lies. Oh, well, I was mad about this, and I was in the paper, and that. Well, he shouldn't have done this. He shouldn't have sold me to them to get to minimum. And Yeah, it's painful, but it's painful to hear, but it's good for me to hear. It's good for me to know what he's spewing, what he's spewing about.
Yeah. Yeah, so. And then I didn't think anything of it after I got out. They come and picked me up and drove me 3 hours to the airport and made sure I got on my plane, and that was that. I didn't hear anything else for 2 years, I guess. And all of a sudden I get a letter in the mail. Yeah, you got to come out here. So I did. But then the prosecutor comes talking to me, and I'm thinking to myself again, like, man, if there are 5, 6, 7 occasions that, there's even a tape where we were talking about the map. Did that. And then, sort of about Baxter being a neighbor and all that. And I didn't think anything of it.
Ira didn't do it. Ira didn't do it. I told you about that, Chad. He got the outcome he shot for. And he was never threatened that he wasn't going to go home in December. That's a whole fabrication right there. He was going home in December. There was never any reason he wouldn't. So he's twisting everything.
Well, he'll get into some other things, okay? And that's the stuff, other things that I want you to hear just to bounce it off you and see what you think about it, okay?
All right. Yeah.
I was always pretty good with law, pretty good with courts, and all that. And I didn't see anywhere that John could have got convicted, but they sure did. And they went after it, made sure the game was played to where they got what they wanted.
Yep.
That's just the gist of it,
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I would like to do is kind of just back up a little bit and go back. I want you to know that last night we found some corroboration of some things, okay? And there is a recording where one of the investigators does say that the map was found in your cell.
Right.
Okay. Can you take me back to that day and tell me whatever it is you remember about that day?
Well, see, they didn't call me in until after they searched my cell. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think it might have been the next day even after they searched my cell. And they took some paperwork, took some letters, and took that map. And I really truly didn't think anything of it at the time. But then he calls me in there and starts telling me what he understands. And when I was like, man, that was a state game on the back and a fucking fishing pond map on the front. I mean, what are you talking about? But no, we know better. I don't want to hear it. We know exactly what that was. We know exactly what it represents and what it's for. Okay? What? First time I met with him, I just played with him. You know what I mean?
Who are we talking about here, though?
Like Azure and Snake Fiction.
Okay.
Up in Volksburg. Volksburg, he wanted to run his mouth. He wanted to be threatening and everything. And Azure wanted to be, like good cop, bad cop. He wanted to be, listen, we just got to investigate this. We don't really see anything about it. We had to go to the fruition of it because, it was started, information was given, and, the corporate evidence found in your cell, like the information that was given. So, we just have to, dot the I's and cross the T's. And then, I didn't do anything or think anything until like about 2 or 3 days later when I see my caseworker. And then when I see my caseworker, he told me that if I got involved in it at all, they had to transfer me. And if they took transfer, it'd be minimum. And I'm thinking, okay, that's what the hell I was trying to get you to do to begin with. Y'all kept playing some bureaucracy on me, wouldn't transfer me, wouldn't let me get it, wouldn't let me reclassify. So I'll force your hand. And I did that, but it backfired in my face.
Yeah, he's such a liar. He brought this to them and promoted this because he was mad at me that I wouldn't give him that money. It's crazy.
This is the
It's
part,
crazy.
like the official story, the state story is that on June 30th, 2010, that that Jackson gets a hold of Sam Azure and reports this and hands over this map in an envelope, okay?
Right.
And that's the only thing that you've ever known, okay? And what he's said this to me multiple times now, that's not really how it happened, okay? And you told me a story. Tell me the story about Jackson and his store.
Okay, so in prison, if you have the means, you can buy a lot of extra stuff on canteen, the commissary. And then when people need stuff, if they don't have it on hand, some people don't think ahead, they don't have what they need, they'll buy it from you. And you can charge them 1.5 or double on everything you sell. So you can make pretty good money doing that. Jackson had a really good job there. He was the number one swamper there. That's why he would never go to the kitchen. He hated kitchens. He hated it. But anyway, he had a good job, so he had the money, and he built a hell of a supply. Well, you're only allowed 2 bins of product, food, clothes, everything, into 2 Foot Lockers. So if you get in trouble and you have a store, they take all that extra stuff and you never get it back because you got more than the 2 bins full. So they came and they got him. It might played into this, what happened. I don't know, but they came and got him. I heard he was writing letters to a senator or a state representative, and he was getting nasty with them. So they did an investigation. This is the rumor, a word. I don't know this to be true, but this is a rumor. And they came and got him, and they took all of his stuff. The next day, they let him come back. Did he talk to them about me then and push it then? I don't know, but he got to come back. Then he came around the table. There was about 5 or 6 of us sitting around. He said, I'm getting all my stuff back, so I'm going to have my store back later tonight. And everybody's like, yeah, right. That doesn't happen. You never, ever, ever get it back. Sure enough, OSI come walking in with garbage bags full of stuff and gave him his stuff back. And everybody's like, whoa, watch him. Watch that guy. And that's when I was he was pushing me on this, he wanted to kill people thing, and I was getting distance. I had already been applying to get out of that unit. But I was nervous about him then, and I got away from him. And then look at everything that happened. So something was up with that. There was something that was severe. OSI never comes in anyway. They would send a CO, a low-life CO, to bring stuff. They wear their ties and they come walking in, and everybody was freaked out by that. So,
and that's because you have that story, and then Jackson tells this story, and to me it kind of seems like there's a little bit of this maybe going on.
I think there's a lot that we will never know about this story, but I'll tell you this much: this is a government operation. This is the prison doing what Bowmaster, what Backstrom all funneled down. And the warden, Reiser, sitting over here condoning it all, saying, okay, boys, do what they need. You know, Bowmaster was the district attorney. And that's what this was. This was a government hit. That's what this really was, Chad. I mean, I've told you this from the beginning, and I don't think you believed me at first. Don never believed it. This was a government hit. This was a government takedown. He didn't want me coming back to the neighborhood. He wanted to hold me down, and he could do it if he could get this to clinch this murder thing. You know, this murder thing.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of elements going on. I mean, something the audience needs to understand too is that exactly at this point in time in 2010, when all this stuff happens, that's when you have a private investigator, Mike Morley, jumping down Dakota County's throat, trying to get your discovery, you're trying to find McPhillips. You heard that she might recant about the first case. You got all these really good angles happening for you. And then all of a sudden this happens just coincidentally out of the blue, right?
And I'll say again, I always said this to you, but Mike Morley was a retired FBI agent, I believe. He was some kind of big government cop. Honest, like Don and like Jim Meehan. Honest as the day is long. And he was mad because Backstrom wouldn't give him data practices, which is FOIA. It's a law. He'd never seen anybody in the prosecutor's office deny giving it. And he was mad, and he was starting to get ready to go to judges. He was starting to make moves, and Backstrom was feeling the heat because he knew if he had to release that, Morley would have said, get him out of prison right now. because of what they did in the first case. And I think you have all that with your viewers. They're going to know about that first case.
Yeah, there's a
the
lot.
Blue Earth story and the whole thing. So
there's a lot in the first case.
There's so much here, so much corruption here. And that's what I want your audience, that's what I want America, that's what I want Minnesota to know, is that there's so much corruption here. It's not 1 or 5 or even 10 things. There's 20 things that they did that were completely off the rails.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway. And just hearing his voice makes me almost ill.
Were there, as this stuff's kind of going, so, I mean, the gist of it is, you know, they find this map, they confront you, there's a conspiracy, a plot, or something or other, and from the emails, it kind of sounds like, hey, kind of there's a door that opened for me and I can get where I want to get.
Right.
Okay.
Which is minimal.
Yeah, and so kind of at this point, what kinds of things are going on from them? Like, are they?
Well, they're playing coy. See, they're not telling me their intentions. They're not telling me what they're trying to turn it into. They're just saying they got to investigate it to a conclusion. And like, this is really going to happen. We just got to dot our I's and cross our T's. It's what we need you to do. And at first I was like, hell no, I'm not doing that. So he took his start running his mouth, and then threatening me. And I told Andrew, I said, listen, when you get rid of that kind of a bitch, you can talk to me. And finally he kept.
Who is he saying? Pritchard? Who is that?
Now, the two people that he mentions are Azure, and then he refers to Vogelsberg as Snake Vixen. Okay, and he earlier in the recording he said Snake Vixen and then Vogelsberg, and I had to clarify that with him too, that's who he was talking about, because Vogelsberg, the state basically in appeals that you had, came back and said, well, Vogelsberg hardly had anything to do with anything. All he did was give the recording device to Jackson, and that was, and then get it back from him. That's the only role that he had in this.
That's
but
because you know about that he got caught. He was having sex with one of his confidential informants. He was stealing money and drugs from the from the jail lockup, the county lockup, giving it to this young lady. And him and even the chief of police was doing it too. They were having sex with this girl, and they got caught. And they kept it low. The government here is dirty. They'll keep that low. They kept it. It was on 39th page or something like that. I have the article actually, but I think I have it in my stuff I brought. But they wanted him left out of it because they didn't want me to have grounds.
He ended up no charges and he resigned.
I know.
So it was kind of nicely handled. But
that's why they. Oh, he didn't have nothing to do with nothing. No, he had a lot to do with a lot. You don't come into the prison all the time like this and give a recorder with an on and off button or whatever it is.
I don't want to. The thing about Vogelsberg, though, and we've talked about this in the past, though, is that you two both shared the same memory about that controlled recording, one of the controlled recordings, about Jackson was hounding you, and you're like, what the hell? What are you wearing, a wire? And Jackson lifts his shirt up, right? Yeah. Well, Vogelsberg remembered that same thing happening, and it's not on the recording.
I know. There's a lot. This is what makes me the most angry, and I would impress upon your audience to think about this. If the government can use a recording to try to frame you, we use the word frame you for a crime, they should have to use everything there. And as
the whole recording.
The whole thing.
Right.
And Kessler Forensics and Don Sasma, a seasoned veteran law enforcement professional, both agree they're massive pieces, significant pieces, anywhere between 18 and 41 minutes. We never got an exact, but there's a lot missing. Mm-hmm. And that is what makes me the angriest, because everything they took out made the case unwinnable times 10. There was already things in there that made it, I think, unwinnable, because I said to him, I'll give you the money, just leave this alone. I mean, there are things that you've probably isolated and shown to your audience that I told him. I didn't. He's pushing me, and I was trying to appease him, because I want to get home to my children's graduations, and they're coming up in 2 years and 3 years. I wanted to be home. I didn't want my daughter and my son to graduate without their father there. That was my big push. That's why I needed his legal help. And Jackson, he says he was good with the law. He was. He was really good with the law. He's smart. He's a con man. He's a psychopath, but he's smart. and he knows how to fight with the law. Anyway, long story short, that's my biggest thing is you take out. There was one time I had to actually push him off me and bounce him off of a railing because he got so mad at me. I said, you keep telling me yes, I keep telling you no. The answer is no. I'll never be part of hurting anybody. I need this. And he lunged at me, and there was a camera right above us. See, when they control the evidence, Chad, that's what kills me. That's what kills me.
Right, and that recording, as far as we know,
No,
if it existed, it was gone.
And the video, they didn't even give us the video. I had to fight. I had to bring in a lawyer, Kirk Anderson, and we fought for like 2 months. Finally, they realized we weren't going to give up, and they gave us the video. That's what opened up where we could prove it was missing the audio. I think you're probably representing all this to your audience. I don't know, but
that was
there's
like 2016 or somewhere in there during the course of things.
Maybe sooner, maybe 2013
15 or
possibly.
16, I think.
Yeah,
and
when
then
Kirk
Kessler,
Anderson subpoenaed for that, do you have record of that?
I've seen it. It's been a while since I've looked at that. I just remember, for some reason, 2016 stands out, and I think it was 2017 is when Kessler died. It was shortly.
No, that all happened back. Kessler died about the same time as all this, but it was back in 13. This was all in 13. It was like they convicted me in 12 and 13, right on the change of the year.
Yep.
It was shortly after that. Kessler died before this went to trial. Kessler died. I wouldn't be in prison at all if Kessler didn't die. He died before the trial.
So all that stuff was all done before trial, though?
No.
Because you had trial, and then somewhere after that is when you guys got the recordings.
Yeah.
Right?
So what happened was on time frame, on chronology, Kessler, Morley died. You mean Kessler died or Morley?
No, not Morley. Okay. That was like 2010.
Yeah, Kessler died
before
later.
The trial.
Oh yeah, Kessler died.
It was like 2017 or something.
Maybe earlier than that. But in my recollection, it was a year after my conviction. So that would have been 14. That I started pushing Kirk to get this video. Mm-hmm. Why? Nobody's ever heard of it. The prison underwent a huge, like $20 million renovation. Part of the renovation was what they call CCS, and all prisons are going this way now. Not even high security, even low security. They're all doing it for liability purposes. It's called Constant Coverage Video, CCV, Constant Coverage Video. All of them have it. So Faribault had it at the time. They'd gone through a renovation. So anywhere you are, you're on a video. There's nowhere you can be that a camera doesn't have you. So I said, why wouldn't they have video of all this? There's cameras everywhere. So when I would ask some of the people in the DOC, they would change the subject. They didn't want to talk about it. So then I said, okay. I said, you need to go to the prison, to Faribault Prison, and you need to ask what happened to the video coverage. And because he's an attorney, he has the right of subpoena power. And they brushed him off for a long time, for almost a year. I think it was 6 months or a year. Finally, he's like, John, what do you want me to do? They just won't respond. They won't play. I said, tell them that you're going to file suit and you're going to go to a judge. And once he did that, within a month, we had it. It just showed up one day, and that opened it all up because they did have the video.
Okay.
Overweight me, and then I would talk to Azure, and that's kind of how it went.
Were there a number of like unrecorded discussions between you and Azure?
You know something? I don't know if the discussions in the office was recorded or not. I just don't know that. I would assume it should have been, but I don't know.
Well, let me ask you this: if you were to try to guess how many discussions you had with him, how many would you guess?
Oh, 10, maybe 12. Easy. Yeah, easy.
And what? Kind of give me a rundown on how those discussions would go with him.
Well, I mean, as things were coming along,
it seem like it was maybe turning sideways?
Well, I think after about the third recording, you know, me and John had a conversation. John just flat out just didn't want no part of it. And so when they got their recording, they were like, "Man, you saying flat out you don't want a part of that. You know, you need to nip that in the bud." What Vogelsberg said, you need to nip that in the bud. Hey, we need to nip that in the bud. He said, "Well, when you start talking like that, just go back to the plan, go back to the conversation, and see where it goes."
Push him.
And John went right back to it every time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So let me
Push
ask
him.
about that.
Make
for
it
a
happen.
second. The
Push
two
him.
recordings that
That's
we
what
know
I hate,
of that would have been used in the trial, that was June 30th and August 9th.
Yeah.
But you're saying there were other recordings? Would those have been?
There was about 7, 8 recordings, at least.
I don't know
Because
if I
the
buy
recordings took place
that.
while I was down in the unit working maintenance, and then when they transferred me to the kitchen, they transferred me and transferred me jobs, and put me in the kitchen with you in the same unit. And he moved too. You know, and first recorded, it was like probably 3 to 4 when I was in the bottom at the main unit where we were at, and then probably 3 or 4 when we was in the kitchen unit before I left.
So these would have been inside the prison, not out in the yard?
No, I think it was only like 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 inside. Everything else is outside.
Okay. And so there would
I
be.
think that's where they screwed up, because they couldn't watch me, let's say, and get audio of me if I wasn't inside. I was outside. What they did is they followed me with the cameras on the fences, right? And then took the recording and put the video with it. Well, in his appeal, you know, there was an investigator John had. He said the recordings don't match. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's where they're screwing up. They I'm saying right now, man, Baxter, you know, he was the orchestrator of this whole damn thing.
Yep.
How do you? Yeah. Let me stop or pause right there. How how do you know that?
I don't know that because of the conversations. Yeah.
Between who?
Me and Azure.
And what would Azure say?
Well, you know, we talked about Baxter. He said, "You know, Baxter's a very powerful person, don't you?" You know that? I said, "I don't even know the guy." He said, "Well, he's got a lot of influence, let's put it like that." And he, as well as I, wants this, you know, to come to a conclusion. 2 or 3 times he made mentions like that in various natures. But the same point was given. You know, they wanted, Baxter wanted resolved. And I think what it was, you know, when I sit back in hindsight and think about it, I think Baxter did have something to do with getting John busted in the first place. I always felt
What
that,
was that
you
right
know.
here?
Because he was a neighbor and John was selling dope and, you know what I'm saying? Their kids play together and all that. He was a possible black eye for Baxter he didn't want a part of. I get it. Stop, I guess. But I do know Baxter is in the whole thing. It was made pretty clear of that.
What did he say?
You made a.
I can't remember. I'd have to read the transcript that we did, but I don't know if he said Snake again. Snake made it very clear. What he references a lot of times in this regarding Backstrom is that it was being clearly presented to him by Azure, possibly Vogelsberg as well, that Backstrom, wanted this to happen.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, I think that was a given. You wouldn't. It wouldn't take a 3-digit IQ to figure that out. I mean, Backstrom had influence. He was the most powerful DA in the state of Minnesota. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you had Freeman, and then you had Cho or whatever from Ramsey, which are bigger counties. But Backstrom was recognized as the legal genius in the state, and he had tenure. He had been in there. I helped him win his first election in '94, so he'd been there a long time. My point is this: when you have that much power, and I'll stop with my narratives, but I just want to say again, when you have that much power, him, Vogelsberg, you've got Bowmaster, and then the judges playing with them too, and then you got all the police and everybody, and they're all controlling everything. They control everything. Jim
Well,
Meehan.
it's, I mean,
There's no way I could have won.
Yeah,
Chad.
I mean,
that's my line. There's no way in God's green earth that I could have won this
yeah,
thing.
and I
That's,
mean,
that's my only point.
as I looked through everything, the way it looked to me was that, think of like the nucleus in the cell that kind of directs what's going on everywhere else in the cell, and so you had there's a nucleus in the Dakota County case and a nucleus in the Rice County case, of the key people, and then on the outside of that you had a bunch of people just kind of doing what they were told. A lot of unwitting people that kind of helped things move in that direction just because they were, being told to believe whatever the narrative was, or
Part
or
of a team. It's that blue wall thing. I see that stuff on television now, and they'll show corruption in some of these big cases, and they talk about the blue line and all that. That's exactly what happened here.
Yeah.
Everybody followed the blue line. A lot of them, I think, like I told you, some of them I think felt guilty. Some of them would come to me, they'd put their head down and they would talk, and I could tell they felt terrible. They felt like shit because of what they were doing, but they had to do it, because otherwise they would have to rise up and say, no, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm not going to help you, Jim Backstrom. Paul Bowmaster, I'm not going to help you. And then where would their career be? You see what I mean?
Sure,
So it's
sure.
Then they're not a team player. They're not that blue line anymore. So it was just meant to be for me, my life to be taken from me by this thing.
yeah.
I hate to say it that way.
Your
But
emails tell us that your case worker didn't testify. What could he have testified to?
Me coming in and talking to him about bringing on hypothetical, let's just say,
yeah.
about the situation and what it would do and the ramifications of it and all that.
How did
He made a comment also, they have to investigate it, and but most investigations doesn't come of it, and that's what I expected. Nothing come of it, but
how did things go from you're talking to the caseworker and such to this whole thing about you reached out to Azure and you turned over the map and things like that. How did that all occur?
I didn't turn over the map. The map was found on myself in search. Didn't do that.
No, I understand, but at some point in time, kind of as things were unfolding, that narrative kind of changed.
Yeah, everything changed.
I mean, how did it? I mean, when I hear things on tape where you say that you turned over the map, like how do things go from they found it to you saying that?
A lot of times, well, for me especially, a lot of times I say things in a generalized term that people can
nailed
misconstrue.
him on that one.
That's what that is.
Yeah.
I'll say things like that. Like I told you when I talked to Jan, I bounce things off of Jan and have Jan respond to me, and I'll listen to her responses, and sometimes I'll modify or react to her responses. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of how that came about.
Mumbo jumbo.
Because I think you even testified that you had turned the map over or something like that.
Yeah, that's what they told me to do. When the prosecutor come, right, to talk to me in the jail like 2 or 3 times, and going through the tapes and all that stuff like that. There's all this stuff missing, and I keep asking about it, especially Jackson. You have to answer what you're asked. Don't be filling in the blanks. Don't be answer what you're asked. And so we have the evidence, and this is what we're going to present. He said, this is how we're going to present it, and when you're asked a question, answer it. And they look at the defense to do anything different. So, I was certain we'd be in charge again, if I didn't play ball.
Never.
Let's talk about the recorder for a minute. Did they always use the same recorder, or were there different recorders, or how did that stuff work?
Same one, every time.
And what did that thing look like?
A little square box, about the size of a key fob for your car. Put a little metal thing on the end of it with a round ball. It measured vibration.
How did they turn? How was that turned on and off?
By a switch.
Okay.
Okay, so in the McBroom recording, McBroom brings this up about this, right? And of course Don has his suspicions about that it was Jackson.
Swears to this day, I think he swears that it had to be Jackson turning off and on. I still don't buy that. I've always said that this was done by Bowmaster up the ladder. they could not have everything that was said on there because it was unwinnable, completely unwinnable. So, but
anyway, the reason I brought that up to him is because of that McBroom recording from years ago, because McBroom tries to get him in this corner, trying to get him to admit that he was changing, turning it on and off, and Jackson knew what he was getting at, and he told McBroom that in order to turn it on and off, you had to use like a pin or a paper clip and push it through this hole, and it was a really difficult thing that he wouldn't be able to do himself. And so I wanted to find out, well, how did it turn on and off? And suddenly now there's a switch on it. So.
See, Chad, I don't know this, so I shouldn't say no way in this recording that we're doing here. But think about it. I mean, they have all the money in the world. They're not going to have some broken that you got to put a paper clip in. They're going to have a state of the art with an on-off button, and I don't know that that's even legal either. That a person that's trying to frame somebody or entrap somebody, whatever you want to call it, they should never be allowed to turn it off and on. But that's a whole other issue we have.
Right. Yeah, and they're definitely not supposed to do that. So.
What? Like I still talk to John occasionally. Yeah, I mean we've been in touch. Like what would you say to John today about everything?
What would I say to him?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I fucked up. Because I thought I was gonna be something out of it for myself, and I didn't realize they were going to fry John. I mean, I didn't think it was enough to do. I never did until 2 years later. You know what I'm saying? And the way they played it. I mean, I was told point blankly, I've been charged as an accessory if I did not play ball. And when I asked the prosecutor about the tanks in the jail, that are missing, that, and he's like, "That's Mr. Jackson. You don't have to explain anything. Answer the questions that you're asked." Okay. So I never thought in many years his defense attorney would do what he did. If he'd brought my criminal history up and my past behaviors prior to that, I mean, nobody would listen to me. You know what I'm saying?
Were you ever aware that Azier was hiding your criminal history from other investigators?
I wasn't, but when he defends the case, he would ask me a couple questions. He never brought that up. And that's spiritual evidence. Minnesota has a distinct law. Spiritual evidence is called. Past behavior, bad character.
Now, just for a point, they did bring up his crim history in the trial, but it started. They only went back to 2000, and they started asking questions about it. And Jackson started going into these long soliloquies about, how he had this horrible disease of a drug addiction and this and that, kind of downplaying all of his criminal behavior. And then I think it was. I don't know if it was Behar or Bowmaster or one of the guys in the prosecution kind of jumped in and started really directing and pointing the questions and making it go really quickly like this because they didn't like or at least the way it appeared to me was they didn't like where Jackson was trying to go with stuff. He was really coming across like he was trying to be Mr. Victim.
So they basically were objecting to the questioning and answering going on?
No. I mean, they let... his crim history, if I remember this right, in the trial, they did bring it up, but it didn't start until 2000. His crim history goes back to like 1981, okay? But they start in like 2000, and they start going, and a lot. It's all, writing bad checks, stealing money, stealing cars, and that kind of stuff, and. So they start, asking him questions, and they're giving him kind of leeway to answer the question. And he starts playing this victim card. Well, yeah, I had this drug addiction, and it's the drug addiction's fault, and that type of angle, And then, I can't remember if it was Behar or probably Bowmaster maybe that kind of jumped in and started driving it, making it happen a lot quicker because. It came across to me like they didn't want him repeatedly trying to play this victim card thing because that might not resonate very well with the jury. So, but anyway, they did. So he's trying to claim like that was never part of the case, but it was.
I will say this: Jackson. If there's anything he's right about in here, there's a couple of things there's a few things he's accurate about. Most of it is just hogwash. But one thing he is right about is that I was heartbroken when my lawyer, $20,000 lawyer, basically who just took this case and just let it go down the drain, in my opinion. He didn't do anything right. He didn't do anything to help me. No investigation, which would have exposed everything. He let me hang in the wind. Maybe there was a favor deal. I don't know. But why would he do it? I don't know. But I was heartbroken when he asked questions about crim history. It was quick, a few minutes. The jury just, yeah, okay, cool.
Well,
he could have nailed in. He could have said, "What about theft by swindle of other prisoners?" He got felony charges.
Yeah.
None of that. He didn't blow that open. And I was
he-
hurt.
well-
But you know what he told me later? He said, "You're going to win anyway. He said, we don't need it. Don't worry. You're good." You know.
Well, it's
So that was his defense to me all the time when I would say, "Why aren't you doing anything? You're going to win. We got this." You know? Yeah.
Yeah, in
17 years later, we're going to win.
Yeah, and John's not embellishing much here at all. I remember reading the trial transcripts with Ira. It was the pre-trial stuff, and Ira flat out tells them that because Bowmaster was requesting discovery evidence from Ira, and because they hadn't, he said, "We haven't gotten a single page of anything." And Ira says, "Well, I don't have anything to give. I never interviewed anybody." There was no investigative work done. So you're 100% right about
He
that.
let me out to fry. He just left me to fry. You know?
Tumblers. And he could have bribed my ass, but he didn't. I was like, wow.
Well, it looks like when I went through the trial, they started it in the year 2000 with your criminal history. They didn't do anything prior to that.
Yep. I had a really severe drug addiction back then, man. I had a long criminal history. I mean, just in Stearns County, it was 40 charges at one time. I thought I was slick, because everything runs concurrent and all property crimes run concurrent with one sentence. So I had 40 felonies for bad checks, and I got 121 month sentence. And I thought I was slick. But now, anything I do, traffic citation, anything, and they treat me like I'm some kind of big villain. Just because of that, I've been paying a price for that choice for a long time.
What are you hoping happens from all this now?
I think John should get paid, man. I really do. It is time, but the whole thing was fucking set up.
You got that right.
The whole thing.
I'm going to say a word. I want you to tell me what your first thoughts are when I say it. But what would the word entrapment mean to you?
Exactly what happened to John.
Good question, Chad.
That's exactly what it was.
Exactly. To the T.
But again, I'm getting out December. Month and a half, 2 months away. And they're threatening with locking me up and charging me conspiracy and me not getting out. And me not leaving the state. And no, hell no. So, but again, I'm telling you, there's so much stuff that was said and so much stuff that was done that they deleted. They didn't include.
Yep, you got that
And
right.
I never once ever thought ever would go to trial, ever would be charged, and never would there be any commission out of it. Never in a million years thought that. Because what was there, what I knew was there. I was there,
They made it happen. The cops.
How many
made it
times would you guess John tried to say no to the whole thing?
2 or 3 or 4, probably. At least.
happen. More like double that.
Did it come across to you that John was, like he was feeling hounded or pestered or that kind of a thing?
By me?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Did he ever say to you like, leave me alone, I don't want to talk about this or any of that kind of stuff?
None of those words. But he was like, man, I'm done with this, man. I don't want a part of it. I'm cool. I'll give you some money anyways. I'll give you some tools if you need it. And stuff like that, man. Don't even worry about it.
Yeah.
I'm good. But see, those tapes never were real.
That's reality right there.
They would say something to me, and then they would tell me to, when you start talking like that, to redirect you. And that's what I did after that,
There's truth to what he's saying here, okay?
There's truth to that. What he just said right there, I can see. because I was pounding him. I don't want no part of this. Like I said, we got into a physical thing over it, and at least 8 times I said I don't want no part of it. But anyway, I saw a dialogue where they said when he starts talking like that, change the subject or da da da. So there's a lot of truth to that.
I think it's a phone. I don't know if it's a phone call between Azure and Jackson, as all this stuff is going on, and Azure. I think it was Azure who tells Jackson, you need to stop talking so much and try to get him to talk more, because it was it was Jackson driving the whole conversation over and over and over.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. See, to me, I don't know why. See, Ira brought up entrapment, but then he let it go. I don't know why. He just didn't do anything
well,
right.
there was a wrinkle to that, okay?
See, to me, that's the epitome of entrapment. If a cop is telling you to redirect them and to stop talking, let him talk, they should not do anything like that.
There was a little wiggly thing in this whole deal there, okay, where what the state alleged that the plot and the map and the money were so this is where this whole thing with Jackson turning things over on June 30th comes into play. Okay, the state plays this off that was their first awareness of anything. Okay, and that the map was drawn, the money was transferred, and the plot was arranged and discussed before the state was ever aware of it. So therefore, the crimes actually happened before the state got involved. Therefore, it wasn't entrapment. That's the way they played that hand, and that might be why Ira ended up kind of having to back away from it, because of this weird way they finagled the whole thing to work.
That's a lie, though. The state was involved in this from the first day. The day he talked to that case manager, before anything even happened, that's when the state got involved. They referred him to Azure, who brought in Krennic. I mean, I don't know, Chad.
Well,
I mean,
there's still this other claim. Like, here's where I'm at with it, because I don't know. I mean, I wasn't there. I don't know everything, but this whole thing with Jackson, with you telling me about Jackson in the store, Jackson talking about them coming to searching his cell, and the map being discovered then, and I'm open to that idea.
I'm not, because he has the map in his hand. He walks by a camera and he kind of waves it at the camera to set this whole thing up. He built this. Jackson's built the beginning of it, but then after he built the beginning of it, there wasn't enough there. But the state had already got a taste for it. Backstrom had a taste for it. He had Morley coming at him, saying, I need to see that 07 case. We're going to get Woodward out. And he knew they could. He had to do something. He was in an emergency profile. So he goes to Bowmaster, who's this lapdog. Bowmaster was nothing but his lapdog. He was always the senior man, and Bowmaster was about 5 rungs down. And Bowmaster would do anything he asked. And he said, listen, he probably didn't tell him about Morley and the heat. He probably just said, I want this. And that's all he has to say is, I want this, and it's done. Mm-hmm. They controlled everything, Chad. They controlled all the evidence. They controlled all the witnesses, everything. They controlled all the mail coming in. They put me in a dungeon where I couldn't talk to anybody for 2 years. I'm in a dungeon. Who gets to do that?
2.5.
Yeah, but I mean, 2 years prior to trial. I was there a half year after trial.
Yeah.
But the point is they controlled where I was, who I could see. They controlled. It's crazy.
Yeah,
Chad.
let's keep going with this,
because what happened here is crazy, and I want America to know about this, and I hope it.
Did you ever receive any admission from anybody that there was stuff missing?
No, not once. No. Every time when a prosecutor comes see me in a jail, and I ask, well, what about this tape? What about that? What about this? And he said, Mr. Jackson, what's going to be submitted? It's going to be submitted by the state. This is their case. You will answer what you're asked.
I believe that.
You joke, we put under charges. So that insinuation with me was like, okay. But I still never in a million years thought his defense attorney would do what he did.
Yep, me neither. They isolated him. They isolated Jackson to one.
So I'm trying to play the fine line of, okay, all right, cool. Wait for his defense attorney to get on the line and start asking me the right questions. He never did. If he did, I'd blew the whole damn case out of the water. But he didn't.
What a
Were
good
you
guy.
ever John when they took him into custody that day in August?
I didn't see because they transferred me first. Yeah, they come put me in that tag and transferred me out there like the next day to the county jail under the name Thomas Asher. And point blank, nobody talks to me. That's what they ever said. He said Asher. And so within the transfer, me to Short Lake. And when I got to Short Lake, they were told the same thing. Any issues, call me, I'll take care of it. And so I told you about that black boy in the shower. I had to go 3.5 hours up there just to resolve that issue to my satisfaction. You know what I mean?
Yeah. John, they put John in seg for 30 months.
30 months?
30 months.
Wow, I didn't know that. No idea.
And he couldn't work on his case, and he really couldn't do shit.
That's why they did it. They didn't want to work on it. They wanted to delay the time lapse. That's what they did, you know?
Yep. He's right about that too.
Figured when it's time lapse, then you know, they win. It's all covered up now.
Yep.
Once your time lapses, then you got a hell of a battle. Unelapse that time, you know what I'm saying? It's acceptance.
Yeah.
Thank you, Department of Corrections.
Yeah.
They do that to me.
You in your emails you made a couple of statements kind of about yourself. You mentioned the word greed and self-centeredness and things like that.
I was probably the worst asshole you ever meet. Self-serving and self-centered. Brave out. Accolades. Did I have a tattoo on my forehead at the time? But you know, my life had been that way. My life had put me in situations about it that was the only thing that helped me survive. That kept me happy with myself, let's say. I looked in the mirror. You know?
He's a psychopath, really.
It took me a lot of years to get past that.
You mentioned kind of regretting some of this stuff. How would you?
I regret getting involved in all of it. Because I should just save me and mind my business, don't go fuck themselves, and just waited my time out. But I got out and no worse to wear and none of the bullshit. But I didn't. You know, like I said, I was trying to outplay the system and outmaneuver them. And so when I got transferred to the Final Lakes with my same pay, good job, better job than I had, I was comfortable. I thought, yeah, okay, cool, I won. But no, I didn't.
When I read through your testimony, it kind of seemed like they were trying to point out, or his defense attorney was maybe trying to point out that that there were some benefits like minimum and some job pay stuff or things like that. And when I read the testimony, you kind of came across like there weren't any benefits, and it was all struggles for you as a result of everything.
That's what I was told. You know?
Yeah. So. Yeah. I mean, is it fair to say some of the stuff in that testimony is not exactly accurate?
A lot of it ain't.
Yeah.
Like I said, ask and answer. You know. I was being charged with conspiracy, you know what I'm saying?
Not true.
So, I wouldn't let that happen.
That's hogwash.
Did that feel like coercion to you?
Well, of course it was. From the beginning. Because Snake Blixen, he threatened me I don't know how many times from the beginning. That's why I told Average, keep that fucker away from me. Pretty much in those words. Listen, I ain't got nothing to say no more. I ain't got shit to say to you guys. Keep that motherfucker away from me. The fucking snake. I don't want to hear his fucking mouth. And
Something like that did happen. There is a recording where Jackson is pissed about another officer running his mouth.
Was it Vogelsberg or Krennic? I think Krennic.
Well,
you might have them mixed up, but I don't know.
Well, that's what Don thinks. That's what Don thinks too. I sent pictures of these people to Jackson, and he affirmed Vogelsberg was
Okay.
Vogelsberg. So
See, that's why they had to say Vogelsberg wasn't involved, because he had so much criminal activity, and they had to keep him out because a judge could have kicked my case back. And they see this is tricky. There's a lot of.
but it was some meeting with Jackson when one of the officers there, detectives or somebody, read the Miranda rights, and that flipped him off. Like, and he makes a comment that if you guys think you're going to charge me with anything, then I'm going to walk right now. You know what I mean? And so, on the recording, he's saying this, that he's being threatened with charges and all this kind of stuff, but yet in some of the recordings he has, it's just the opposite. He's telling them he's not going to get charged.
Yep.
Right?
I know everything he's telling you, Chad. I mean, I hate to put it this way, but he fed you so much garbage on this. But at the same time, there are spots of truth.
Right. Well, that's what I'm getting.
Like my defense attorney, they were pushing him, telling him to push me and to trap me. All that.
Yeah.
A lot of that's true. There's some things that are true.
Well, I mean, his motivation for doing it, and
he won't admit to the real bad. See, he's a psychopath. Psychopaths don't take blame well. They don't take responsibility well.
And that's what surprised me about this call.
And you're pushing him to take responsibility, and he's twisting and spinning it a lot. He's spinning it back. Now, believe me, there's enough blame for these cops and Department of Corrections to last them a lifetime. But Jackson is not the innocent lamb that he's trying to say he is. So.
Right. I would agree with that for sure.
They did. Didn't let it be all done.
Do you know who it was that actually searched your cell at all?
I don't. No.
But it was Azure that came to you, is that right?
After the fact, like a day, maybe two at the most.
What about, let's see, they kind of made a big deal of that envelope at the trial, that it had an exact date and time on it.
It had nothing to do with that map, man. Nothing.
Because I think it said June 5th and 1:45 p.m. or something like that.
That had nothing to do with that map whatsoever. That was a letter I got from Jan with some stuff in it. I was supposed to call her. I was supposed to talk about it. She's writing a book, about my life involving other people's lives and similar behaviors. And you heard her talk about that. She was in death a couple different times. And that was just me getting the call, Jan. That's all it was.
Were you able to get that book back from her? I think you had to go to court or something, didn't you?
I did. Yeah.
Did you ever do anything with it?
No. My daughter wants to. My oldest daughter, but she was writing my life story before I die.
Yeah. So I mean, and kind of apart from all this, how do you feel like Thomas Jackson became Thomas Jackson?
Today?
Not today. I mean, all the other stuff, in the past. Like, how did things end up where they did for you? In terms
I was sexually abused in the Boy Scouts for 3.5 years. First of all, my dad dropped me off on a doorstep with his mom and dad when I was 3 months old. Left me, never came back for 16 years, 17 years. And so I had a lot of shit going on in my life, man. A lot of crises when I was a kid. So I became introverted. I became self-surviving, self-serving, And that's kind of how I lived my life, most of it. When I was 16, because of the abuse that was going on, I left the state, went to Florida, and never came back. Because of what was going on in my life. My grandmother did the best she could. She had 13 kids. I was 14. So every little dime that the kids would have for a pop or a soda or ice cream, went to me. And, I was resented a lot of years because of that. And so I never had friends. I was cross-eyed. Both my eyes turned clean in my nose. Had 3 surgeries on those. But, I had a hard childhood, man. That's what I'm
Thomas, have you ever heard of something called the MAOA gene?
I'm going to pause for a quick second here. Because we're gonna go into the weeds a little bit, which doesn't have so much to do with the case. Just because of the viewers that have decided they wanted to tune into this, I think I want to make sure we play it all the way through. But we're about ready to go into the weeds about something that you probably don't know much about either. But let's go ahead and play this, and once we get through it, then I'm gonna add a little bit of context to the whole thing about what I was kind of getting to.
No.
What is it?
Well, they call it the warrior gene, and it has different expressions. But for the bad of the bad, the really bad guys in prison, the murderers and things like that, they have a certain expression of it. But what they kind of discovered with it is that depending upon, like, if somebody has it, and depending upon their childhood, kind of determines the expression of it, and it can, what you describe is trying to survive, right? And what I call the gene the survival gene, because what it does is it kind of switches something inside of people's brains that causes them to kind of go into self-protection, self-survival modes.
Yeah. I've had that quite a few years. Not so much anymore, though. Kind of with the whole 180,
What caused that for you?
A piece of paper telling me I was going to die. I'd do it every time. Or you're gonna die, piece of shit. What are you doing?
Okay, so going back to that MAOA gene, it's a fascinating study that there's the gene tends to control the level of empathy in your brain, and there's variations of it, and the abnormal variations can create either narcissism. So think of pretty much a law-abiding individual that's just very self-centered and selfish individual, or you get the other expression, which is sociopathy, psychopathy, that kind of stuff, where you literally just don't have any empathy for other people at all.
That's him right there.
Yeah, and that's a lot of people that end up, lifelong criminals like Thomas Jackson. Is everything goes through this filter of everything in life goes through this filter of how does this affect me, and there's no regard at all for how anything affects anyone else, and that's, as I've studied Thomas Jackson and his criminal history, and you get these emails from family members of his and things like that. That's what you see every single time.
Yeah,
every single time.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. What I know about sociopathy and psychopathy, I would say so many things nail him. One of the first things that really struck me about him is he would tell the story to me and anyone else that would listen, is he hated his mother. He wanted to kill her. I think she's passed away by now because I think she was sick. No,
still alive.
But he hated her guts. He said, I have the vision someday that I'm going to kill her. I'm going to strangle her. He would tell people this. Well, that's one of and then the random callousness in which he killed me and my family. I mean, the government did this, but he launched it, and he talks about how I feel bad. He didn't feel bad at all. It was about him.
No, I know it. There's a recording between he and his sister after you're pulled out. You're in SAG at Oak Park Heights, and he's got his new cushy job. He's driving a truck and watering flowers at wherever the hell he's at, and he's so proud and calm and glowing. He's just glowing as he's talking to his sister about all this stuff. So I get what you're saying there for sure.
How's your health kind of affecting you now?
Well, it's not the greatest. I can't do a whole lot and breathe at the same time. Something as simple as, like, yesterday I cut a couple pieces of wood with a handsaw. It wore me out. It's 2 pieces of wood. It's all about one foot and 10 inches, and the other 34 inches. And it took me 25, 30 minutes to do that. Just because of the exertion. Yeah, I can't oxygenate. If I just mosey around, don't do nothing, I breathe pretty well, and I feel kind of all see my daughter and my grandbabies in New York, and the old me was just fucking went on. But right now I'm trying to help my daughter, but she's in a bad situation.
Is this Tanya or one of your other kids?
No, it's Jenna.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. See, I got three grandbabies at Tanya's I've never seen. Yeah, so I'll never see them, but thing going on with Jenna right now, it's like day by day, trying to get through it. Trying to help her.
Are you still planning on being up around this area at some point in time?
I am. I should have already been up there. See, the problem is that if I put Jenna in a stable situation, it takes a lot of money that I've got to put away to kind of Minnesota and go to New York. But I'm trying to get through this because that'll take care of it.
Right.
And then I can go and take off to Minnesota.
I'm going to pause here just for context again, because I want to be completely transparent about part of what this discussion that he's bringing up is really about. And it'll become more apparent as it goes, but and just for full transparency is in order for me to get this phone call from Thomas Jackson, he and I had to enter into an agreement between myself, a media company, and himself. And it's kind of interesting the way this started, because I emailed the daughter he's talking about. I ended up finding an email that went to her significant other. And so I sent him a message, and it got to her, and then it got to her mother, and then from that mother to a different daughter of Thomas's, and next thing you know, I'm getting phone calls from this other daughter. That's how I actually got in touch with Thomas, and I explained that I was a podcaster, that I'd been digging into your case, and had been communicating with you, and that I wanted to hear his side of the story with it. And so she got back to me, and she said, yeah, he's willing to talk to you. He's willing to tell you the truth. But he wants to be compensated, and he wants $2,500 because that's what this was all about to begin with between you and John.
Yeah. Wow.
And to me, that was an admission. It wasn't about $10,000 in a murder for hire thing. It was about the $2,500 you'd sent Jan.
Yeah. That's what he didn't get that from me, and it made him furious. So he wanted that back.
Yep.
But I will say that.
Oh,
is that him?
I don't know. I don't think so. It says Sisseton. I don't know. Let's take it and see. Hello?
Hey, do you guys have CBD flour?
No, we don't. In fact, we're no longer in business, so.
Oh, well, sorry to hear that. You have a good day.
Yeah, thanks, bye.
I was hoping he would call. It's afternoon, isn't it? What time is it?
Well, I told him 1 p.m. Central Standard Time to call, so.
Oh, okay. Well, he will call.
So anyway. But yeah, so it started with this admission to me about this $2,500, and that he was bent on coming out on top of this by getting that $2,500, right? And I thought to myself, I'm like, well, I really don't want to pay the guy for anything, but yet nobody in all this time has been able to get him to really talk. Everything always revolves around him getting something out of it, And I thought, well, shit, if he'd asked for 50,000 M&Ms, hell with it. I'd buy him 50,000 M&Ms if it was to get him to tell me what the hell happened, or at least his version of it. But I was honestly very surprised that as somebody that I also labeled, a sociopath, that he threw himself that much under the bus. Yeah, I mean, he doesn't in many areas, but there were many points where he did take and acknowledge some of his role in this whole thing. It's just that he always has somebody behind him pushing him.
Yeah, he spins it around.
Yeah, right.
But the one thing that I noticed though is that he's thinking constantly about what this would mean to him. Again, the sociopath thing. If people catch on and say, "What the hell happened? What is this? How could this happen to a guy and his family? And how could this guy Thomas Jackson, who's a known con man. How could he? So he's trying to put himself in a little bit of a light where it wasn't me though. It was the government that made me. The government did this. So he's trying to keep a back door, I think. You know what I mean? That's why he's not telling the whole truth. That's what I'm getting at. He's telling pieces of the truth, but he's not telling the whole truth.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, my daughter's old man would beat the hell out of her. You know what I'm saying? I mean, abusive.
You talking about Bradley?
That's part of her daughter, but bad situation.
Yeah. Are you talking about Bradley?
Yeah.
We're on this end. We're kind of trying to figure out like what the next step is regarding John. You know what I mean?
I told you that when I come up there, if you want to have your investigator somebody to do a deposition of it, I have no problem with that.
Well, so we'll need something, whether it's a deposition or whether it's just an affidavit or something like that. Okay.
I think it's the smartest thing to do because I mean you talk and you're a doctor, you know, and I'm the guy, and putting weight to that, putting foundation underneath it. So it takes somebody with a license. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
One of the big hurdles with John is just that he's exhausted a lot of his legal angles and
Exhausted everything.
Pretty much. There's a couple of things, okay, and our discussions and where your health's at, things like that might have some meaning and value to it. If one of the things I'd like to be able to corroborate is the health aspect. Would you have, if I sent you like a records release and I kept it just really just to that document that you sent me, would you be willing to sign that for me?
Oh yeah, I can. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I didn't then because the players there was stolen by my attorneys. I figured the easy way to get it would just have them authorize them to send you a copy of it, email it from their files.
Sure, which is fine.
None of this happened.
He did. Phone call.
He didn't follow through with it.
He's a real good liar. That's for sure.
That's not an issue.
Did you think, you spent a lot of time with John, a lot of John's venting about Backstrom and all the shit that he went through. Did you, I don't even know how to ask this. Did you think John that John believed 100% that Backstrom screwed him over? Did you think that Backstrom actually screwed him over? Like, what was that like?
I do. I think Backstrom used his influence to get an investigation on him and set him up. I believe that. And then when this other thing came to fruition, Backstrom thought he had the icing on the cake. I really believe that. Because everything just started pushing hard. And anything that was an opposite to that was ignored and covered up and told, don't talk about it, So I totally believe it, 100% believe it. That's why Backstrom in the newspaper. Oh, I think this, I think that. Yeah, what about me, bud? Nothing. Bad shit to say about me. That just gives you an idea right there where his mom was. That is my opinion.
Did you read some of John's appeal stuff? Is that how you? Yeah. What did it like when you read the stuff about you in there? What did that feel like?
Well, I mean, get asked because I knew the difference. I knew the difference. I knew what happened. Hey, don't get me wrong, I don't feel good about it, but I didn't expect it to happen. I didn't expect any of this to happen this way. I fully believe that no matter what happened, even when I get the letter for trial, I'm like, man, whatever, because of all the stuff I knew and all the stuff that happened. But all that stuff was covered up. It wasn't resented. It wasn't even talked about. Nor was my criminal history. But we all slick. Because I was made clear a couple days before when the prosecutor come see me in the jail, that ask and answer and leave it alone, or I could be charged.
trial was going on, it might have been like the first day. Do you remember overhearing a conversation with John and his wife at all?
I do not.
Because John remembers that John had a conversation with his wife, and then when he got off the phone, he turned around and you were right there or something.
No, I don't recall that.
Okay. All right. I got my kid calling me, trying to figure out where the hell I am.
I'm going to go ahead and pause it. The rest of the recording is just Thomas and I talking about how to, take care of the contractual portion of our agreement. I had agreed to pay him portion of it up front, and then we would work through the story and the details and all these different kinds of things until we felt like we had everything. And then between then and when this call occurred, I got to experience him in a very similar light as you did, where he
oh, God forbid,
he hounded and hounded and hounded and hounded and came at me with a bunch of different angles about how he needed the money now, and that's part of what he's talking about with the daughter. And he and I ended up having an email exchange that went back and forth for about an hour, and I finally said, you know what, I don't care, clearly we're not getting anywhere today, and I'm done wasting time, and I left it like that and stopped responding. I think he stopped responding too, and then a number of hours later, then all of a sudden he kind of came back with his tail between his legs and wanted, he wanted his other half of what we agreed upon. And I said, well, until you tell me everything, we had an arrangement. I'm going to meet that arrangement to get the whole story from you. But if you're not wanting to tell me the whole story, or you're wanting everything now, then, I guess we're just wasting our time. And I kind of left it like that. And then it was a day or two later, something like that. And it might have been the next day. And I was at lunch the next day, and all of a sudden, boom, I had 18 emails from him where he kind of cracked, and he was, telling me all this kind of stuff and throwing himself under the bus and things.
He told you more than this then? He came around to reality a little more?
The truck, obviously, there's much about this there's much about the truck, okay, that he doesn't really want to go into. And, about, I don't know, a week or two ago, I got contacted by the daughter that he references in this call, and he wanted to reach out and, something to do with this Boy Scout settlement fund. And I thought, well, okay, if he wants my help, then, I need him to tell me the truth like he agreed to about this truck. And so there's actually a chance today, any time now, actually, that he might be calling, and that's he needs to cover this truck thing with me if he thinks I'm going to try to help him in any way, which I don't know that there's anything I can do about his problems there, whatever they may be. But anyway, he's supposed to finish that, and I'm really curious to see where that call's going to go with him, and whether what he tells me is going to match all of the things that we know about it.
My opinion on this thing, I think I might have said this to you, but I think he's trying to run another scam against the Boy Scouts. He sees all these people around the country are getting $100,000 payouts, $200,000 payouts, and he's trying to get a piece of that pie. He's hoping that with you might be able to bring some notoriety.
Well, I think the Boy Scout Settlement Trust is all. It's been in courts and stuff. Then they've been talking about whether they're going to dissolve it or not, and this and that. And so the information the little bit of information I've gotten so far seems to indicate that he hasn't, gotten his money, and that other people aren't, and they're just siphoning off the interest in this trust fund, and they're not paying anybody or whatever. I mean, that's an enormous trust fund. It's like $2.8 billion in it. But so anyway, there's a chance here yet today that phone might ring again, and it might actually be him. But tell me, like, now that you've kind of gotten through the majority of this call,
I think.
I mean, I want to know. There's what you think. There's what you feel, right? And I want to know, like what were your emotions like knowing that we were going to do this today, and then what changed in those emotions, or what did you feel as we were going through some of this stuff?
I knew it would be painful just to hear his voice because he's such a con artist. You know, he's so slick. He's always thinks he's smarter. He thinks he's, and I saw that as I look back on how he dealt with me on everything. And as I hear him, I knew it would be difficult. But as I hear him, I realize that he's given you probably a guess would be somewhere about 50 to maybe 60%. Or maybe even 70% is just complete fabrication, like him not turning the map in, him not promoting this thing in the beginning. Later, where he talks about they were slick and they cut everything out and they pushed him and this kind of stuff, a lot of that's true. I know I wasn't there for that, but I know because just some of the dialogue I heard, you know, they did do that. And I think he was fed up with it. He probably would have walked away because it wasn't worth it. What he was getting wasn't worth it. But once the government had their hands on this, they couldn't let go because of my neighbor. He couldn't let go. He wanted this at all costs. But you know what's funny about it all in all to me is that he talks about how they were slick and how they things are missing and all that. And he's absolutely correct about that. And that's what I've been saying from the very first day when I read the transcripts. When I read the transcripts of the walk and talks, you know, they're like, I'm like, wait a minute. We said all these things and all this and physical altercation, all these other things, and it's all gone. And he knows it's gone. I think to assess it all, though, it's just really painful because what he did is a little game. See, he's very vindictive. It's like with you, right. Okay? I think you got a taste of his vindictiveness. He wanted he wanted you to pay him some money. You know, even though it was a small amount of money to him, he's always fighting for that money, that $2,500, $1,250, whatever it was. You know, he's fighting, and you saw how he can fight for it, and like with me, he was vindictive against Department of Corrections. They didn't want to let him ever have minimum again because he gets in so much trouble. Mm-hmm. He's bad news. He wanted to shove it down their throat that he was going to, and he did. He did. He showed them.
Yeah, he did that.
So, and I told you that story about it too. And then he tells you the same story I told you. So that's true. See, it corroborated. Yep. Some things corroborated. Other things he's way out in left field that he's just this innocent lamb and he never did anything wrong.
Yeah,
but at the end of the day, he started it, but he had no idea what he was getting. He was opening
and there's
up, you know?
There's a bunch of calls between him and the Jan Tarvestad or with Sam Azure, different things like that I'm gonna turn those into videos too. Some of them I actually already have, and put all that stuff out there because I want people to be able to not just get this side of Thomas Jackson, but understand the Thomas Jackson from 2010 and the things that he was saying and doing back then that he kind of brushes off with just one or two sentences with me. There's times. There was a August 9th 2010 call, I think it was, with Jan, and he tells her that he knows that there are charges coming down the pike on you with this whole thing. So in our recording, this one right now, he says, I didn't know anything and ever and he's on the phone, I think it was with Jan, and he's telling her about what's going to happen. And
he snowballed you.
I knew it because that's why I asked that question.
Right.
A lot of the questions I asked him for specific reasons. And
let me ask you this, Chad. When he came back to you all emotional about this, trying to get money, and that's what motivates him. He's money motivated. But when he came back to you, did he actually come off the truth of a lot of these lies that we just listened to? Did he come off a lot of that, or how?
Well, I haven't.
You don't have that recorded.
No. I don't have. This was the last. I'm trying to remember here. This might have been the last actual recorded phone call I had with him. I had some interactions with him afterwards. There was one point where I had transcribed this. Okay, we were trying to figure out what it is. He mentions about coming up for a deposition or things like that, and we didn't feel that was necessary. We felt all that was really necessary was that if I could get the call transcribed, is get him to sign it with a legal statement that he's affirming that it's the truth and so forth and so on. And so we transcribed it. I put all that together, and I sent the document to him and told him that I needed it signed. And all of a sudden he kind of disappears and doesn't talk to you for a while. And then there was a time where can't remember if we spoke on the phone maybe for a short period of time, but he told me that he was coming up here, and that if I gave him some gas money, that he would jump right in the car, get right on up here, and he'd get this thing signed for me. And that's what I wanted. I wanted a in-person signed in ink copy of it. And so he told me he was jumping in the car and he'd be there in 3 hours. He was in St. Cloud or somewhere visiting his former an ex-wife and kids or something, right? And so I thought, okay, what the hell? It's another $100. And so I go and I send the money to him, and then nothing. And then the next day I get a message. I think he called me maybe the next day and tried to tell me that he did come up here, but he got in trouble over in Moorhead and got arrested or something. Didn't really want to go into that and this and that. And I don't know that he was ever even in the state of Minnesota, to be honest. But I thought, okay, that's, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, and then I'm the idiot, right? So I haven't done anything really with him since then. And then this whole thing just a couple of weeks ago popped up again, and I thought, okay, maybe we'll be able to leverage this a little bit into him telling us some more about the truck, because he really did avoid that, and that kind of upset me, because we all know that there's a lot more to that than he let on. So
yeah, there was no money trail. Follow the money. I never gave him money, and that's what they lied about. They said I gave him money. I never gave him. Why would I give him money on something I would never do? But let me just say this though, Chad. The emotions that I feel are painful to go back into the guy that actually started this whole endeavor against me. But at the same time, because you're in it, and I have so much faith in you and what a good person and good guy you are, I see that you, and I already knew, you know all the details, but you playing with him like that and you dealing with him and understanding him, it just tells me more and more that you know every single aspect of all of this stuff. And that's important to me, because Don knew it and Jim Meehan knew it. Jim Meehan died. Now Don knows it, and he's got a couple of other investigator helpers that know it. But for you to know it, that's what I've always been after. And again, I go back to this. You could call him the sociopath that started it for personal gain. There's no doubt about that. Okay, that's obvious. He even admits it multiple times.
He did.
But at the end of the day, it stalled. It would have went nowhere. The only reason it picked up legs and started to run was because the government could do anything they wanted. They controlled all the evidence, and they didn't just use corruption. They used despicable, disgusting corruption against me and my little baby girl, my little baby boy, and my wife and me. And they killed us. And the government and they broke us. And the government should never be allowed to do that. And that's what the feeling I get. That's the emotion I get from this. So.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing with Thomas Jackson for me was, there was the part of, I obviously wanted to know it. I wanted to hear his side. I wanted to measure his side up against what we knew, right? But whenever you're dealing with these really interesting characters like this, there's part of the whole story there is wrapped up in this experience of what is it actually like to deal with a person like him, right? And that's what really turned it for me. Was that one. It was a Wednesday morning. Because I had the day off, and I came in and I thought he and I would, wrap this all up with a nice long interview that day or something. And it turned into this back and forth. And he wanted the money now. And if I didn't give it to him now, nothing was going to happen. And I wasn't going to let him win this thing.
You see how he did me?
Yeah.
If you don't get this, if you don't do this,
yeah.
I'm going to pull the plug. He was going to pull the plug on Jan and the Attorney General, second in command. I told you.
Right.
Okay, and now this guy was he ever involved with Jan? Probably not, but I believed he was. was, okay? So he was going to pull the plug on that.
Yeah, see, I mean, you had something to
same
lose.
Thing. You and I had the same thing. He was trying to. You were in a smaller venue, but at the same time, he was trying to pressure you. He was trying to blackmail you and extort you and con you to get what he wanted.
Right.
And
but he didn't.
Man,
I mean,
it's crazy. It's almost creepy how you felt the same little feelings that I felt. Yeah. I felt them in a huge way though, because in prison, you can't get away from somebody.
Right.
He was across the hallway from me every day. When I was on the phone, he was standing right here every single phone call I made. He purposely would always keep an eye on where I was. Creepy. Really creepy.
Yeah. Yeah, I could just hang up the phone, so it was easy for me. But I didn't have, you had some things on the line, and I didn't. I was prepared at the point where I was with him to just go forward. Whether I talked to him or not, I didn't really care. I kind of, I had a good understanding of really what happened back then. And so if he walked away at that point in time, I didn't really care. Yeah. I had this interaction with him that was so parallel to what you described your interactions with him like too, exactly. That I thought, even if this guy walks away at this point in time, I still have a really interesting angle and story here of having firsthand experience Thomas Jackson.
Thomas Jackson, the con, the blackmailer, the extortionist, the hustler, basically the sociopath.
Yeah,
he doesn't care. He didn't care one bit about who you were and that you had to give him hard-earned money. He didn't care about none of that. And I can guarantee you, he never cared that I spent 30 months in a dungeon. He never cared about that. My children cried. They cried themselves asleep for years. He never cared, Chad. He never cared one bit. And the world needs to know. Right. The world needs to know. But does anybody care? I hope some people care. But it's really a sad state of affairs that the government got in bed so deep with him to do this endeavor.
Right. Yeah, I agree. All right, well, let's wrap her up for today. And then hopefully he'll give us a call. And if that happens, obviously we're going to do an update on that call in terms of what that provides us in terms of understanding. So otherwise, let's hope everybody who tuned into this and has watched this has a great day.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
John really appreciates your support. You have no idea. Most of you have no idea what it's like to be, imagine being stuck in your bedroom for 17 years and never being able to leave. And that would be nice 17 years. What John had experienced was, as he's described to me many times, dozens of times, it was pure hell. And so he appreciates your support. I appreciate your support. And let's stay tuned and hopefully we come up with some more stuff for you guys.
Yep. Thank you.